Okay, well, I am going to record. Yeah, I can only just make you the host, so I'll just have to.
Yeah, no worries. You'll just have to let people in.
Yeah. Hey, Brian. Hey, Liska. Is it Liska? Liska?
Good morning.
It's Liska.
Liska. Hello.
Hello.
All right, awesome. So we're going to give just a minute for everybody to get in here.
Yeah.
I'm going to put my phone on airplane mode. Oh, well, it's 11:04, so we are pretty much there. Let me go back to my notes. All right. Okay, guys, so I'm going to go ahead and get started, and we'll just let people in as they come in, because we're about 5 minutes in, so I don't want to keep you guys waiting. Welcome, and thank you guys so much for hanging out with us today. We're going to be talking about anxiety. And first and foremost, I want to say I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving medical advice. My experience is in the metaphysical, which just means the energetics. It's everything beyond what you can see with your eyeballs. And so I have a lot of experience there, and that's the perspective I will be taking. And so this is not a medical webinar. I also love to help people, and with this specific issue, because I've done a lot of this work for myself. That's, I think, important, right? To speak on something that you have personal experience with. And I myself have overcome anxiety and overcome it often, because it's not something that I think is just a one and done. Our world is not set up that way. There is shit that makes you anxious. There's new shit that makes you anxious at every new chapter in your life. So, for example, for me, I didn't really experience anxiety being stored as muscle tension in my body until after I had my daughter. So once I had children, all of a sudden there was this new fear that I had never experienced before. And it resulted in a fear of, taking risks and like common things like crossing the street, right? Like, oh gosh, we got to be careful. That's not something I was ever fearful of before. And so today we're going to talk about a couple of ways that anxiety shows up. And what I want you to know is that these are just a couple of the ways that anxiety shows up. There are so many ways that this shows up, and it might be unique to you. And I also want to invite you guys, Brian and Liska, Devoted Columbus Weddings. I would love to know your name. If you guys will drop in the chat your name, where you're from, and what makes you anxious. That's what I want to know. We're going to be discussing what anxiety is, what are the root causes of anxiety from a metaphysical and mindset perspective. We're going to be talking about the good news. I didn't think that one through. We're going to be talking about the good news when it comes to anxiety, and some of the real world tools that you can use to help you get out of an anxious state when you're in one. And I'm going to check the chat here. Decision making makes Emily anxious. Yeah, I get it. Sarah says being out of alignment with my values. Finances makes Brian anxious. Jamie from Devoted. Perfect. Sorry, Devoted is my other company, from Columbus, Ohio. Yeah. What makes you anxious, Jamie? Guys, what makes me anxious? Sounds. Certain sounds send me over the edge. We recently got a puppy, and she has a really high-pitched bark, and it makes me crazy. There are certain sounds that send me over. Another thing that makes me anxious is releasing control. That's something that I love to practice, releasing control, and it's been a lifelong practice for me. I know the laws around it, and I continuously practice it. And it's something that I'm evidently supposed to learn over and over and over again in this lifetime. Jamie says, too much responsibility. Yeah, I get it. Okay. All right, guys. So this webinar is really meant to give you some tools. So even though we're going to be talking a lot about like what it is, what anxiety is, and the causes of it, if you stick around to the end, I'm going to give you tools. I'm going to give you real life tools that you can use to get out of it when you're in it. So the first thing, let's just jump right in. What is anxiety? Well, it feels like a restriction in the body, particularly in the chest. A lot of people feel it in the chest. If you guys want to let me know, where do you feel anxiety in your body? It can feel like trouble breathing, an inability to see straight, nervousness, tension, like stored tension. I store my tension in my neck and in my shoulders. It can be an increase, excuse me, guys, I just had lunch. Increased heart rate. It can feel like the world is ending. A lot of people who struggle with anxiety, it feels like the world is ending. I also hear a lot of people say it feels like an elephant is standing on their chest. So the NIH website describes it as feeling restless, wound up, or on edge, being easily fatigued. And these are actually really interesting because these are not things that I knew were associated with anxiety prior to me doing research to put this webinar together. So Liska says, my young adult kids out in the world, yeah, and forgetting stuff for an event. Liska, you are not alone. The reason that we even put this together is because so many people, so many mobile bar owners, the process of events makes them anxious. Like maybe I'm forgetting something. What if I screw up? Like, what if I what if my staff doesn't show up? Like there's 100 things that go into it, but it's really common for mobile bar owners. Having difficulty concentrating, being irritable, having headaches, muscle aches, stomach aches, or unexplained pains. Now I did know that stomach aches was associated with anxiety, but headaches and muscle aches, I did not. Difficulty controlling feelings of worry, having sleep problems such as difficulty falling or staying asleep. These are all, they were just mind-blowing for me. There are many different types of anxiety. No, we talked about this. Excuse me, guys, I'll be right back. Sarah?
Yeah, she's momming this morning and we're gonna let her do that. I personally carry anxiety in like my stomach area. I get nauseous. My heart starts racing, and Liska, I'm with you. Like Dawn was my coach when I was offboarding Bar Magnolia, and I would just be like in her box every day with an event. I'm like, anything could happen. It's not like if something will go wrong, it's what will go wrong. And like, you're trying to like control, and that's where it came from for me. That was like my big realization, is that I was trying to control things that I could not control. Like I couldn't control if I showed up and they wanted me to park somewhere that I didn't fit. I couldn't control if a bartender doesn't show up or got COVID. I can't. And so then it just became a shift okay, if this happens, what's my plan? Like if the worst case scenario happens, what's the plan? Because I can't prevent it. I'll just have to recover from it. But that was a really hard shift mentally, because we're just, I don't know, I was raised to like avoid issues. And like it's on me, like how many times did my parents say, well, if you hadn't done that, then you wouldn't do this, right? And so it was always kind of like regulating my actions to try and prevent outcomes, when I can't control shit. Right? Like ultimately, I can't control anything in the reality of it. So anyways, looks like Dawn's back.
Yeah, so there are a lot of different ways that it shows up, obviously, but the root for this is the resistance or the inability to feel, which it sounds like Sarah just mentioned. So many of us as kids, are like taught that it's not okay to have big emotions, like be quiet, sit still, hush, right? Stop crying, don't fail. Yeah. So, and Gabrielle, we just let you in. Welcome. If you don't mind to drop in the chat where you're from and what makes you anxious. That's what we're talking about today. And so really what's happened is, and you guys, if you've ever been on a webinar with me before, I talk about the archetype. It's called the saboteur. And it is a mental chatter. It's a monkey. It's the monkey mind, and it just never stops. And it's constantly telling you that you're not good enough. It's constantly telling you that you're going to forget something, that your kids are in danger, that you should be doing something right now. You, God forbid, you be resting at all. Like you should be cleaning something incessantly, right? And what it is fear. It's fear run rampant in the mind. And it's our inability or our resistance to feeling things. Gabrielle says, sorry, driving, here to listen, and we'll add more when I'm out of the car. Okay, I'm going to mute you, Gabby. Okay, so the root causes of anxiety are, from a metaphysical or mindset perspective, past trauma. Nimbus, please let me do this. They're rooted in past trauma, verbal, mental, physical, emotional, or spiritual. Again, this is sort of what Sarah had mentioned. As children, we're told, like, sit down, shut up, be quiet. And especially when we're having those big emotions, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but chances are if you're on this webinar, you can relate that your parents didn't have really great emotional regulation. And so they didn't teach that to you. They didn't pass that on to you. And here you are, you're trying to emotionally regulate. And for those of you who have kids, you're like trying to emotionally regulate yourself while they're having a meltdown. And so it can become overwhelming. And that's where that past traumas continue down the line. The great news is that if you guys are here, you guys are really trying to take a different approach, and you're trying to do some mindfulness work so that you don't pass those things on to your children. And so we want to stop that asshole in your head, or at least get him to shut up for a little while. We want to put the saboteur to sleep, and there are a couple of ways that we can do that. But first, I just want to mention, this could have been from a very small event. Sometimes we think of trauma. Sarah, you're reading The Body Keeps a Score. And they talk about how something that's traumatic for one person may not be traumatic for someone else, but something very small, like somebody could take your ice cream from you, like a 6-year-old, your 6-year-old's playing and someone takes your ice cream, and like for the rest of your life, you're like fearful that people are going to take things that are valuable from you. And no trauma is invalid. So like, we want to honor that, like, it could have been really insignificant to someone else, but it's massive for you and your body's storing it. So,
and also, not to interrupt you, but I love this topic. Also, you may not remember what it is. It may not be something that you are cognizant of, like what happened or why. But the key thing that Dawn was saying is that you weren't allowed to process in that moment. You weren't allowed to have the big emotion, either because it wasn't the right place, or you didn't feel heard, or nobody was listening to you. You know, so they took the ice cream cone, and like, you were being loud about it, but everyone was like, it's fine, it's no big deal. But it was a big deal to you, right? And so you didn't feel heard, and you didn't feel vindicated. And so you build up this. Life is a bunch of patterns, and it starts when we're very young. And actually, my husband just told me, he read an article. Most of your patterns are developed between the ages of birth and 7.
yes.
Most of your patterns that you have today were formed and like forged between the ages of 0 and 7. I don't know about you, but I don't remember shit all of what happened to me or what my life was like between 0 and 7. But I am the result of a lot of those patterns. And so you don't have to necessarily remember it, but the process of looking at how you respond to things from a place of curiosity can help identify those patterns that you have that aren't serving you anymore. But anyways, I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, and just to touch on what you said there about not being able to remember, that is a surefire way to know that there was some sort of trauma that was occurring. If you don't remember your childhood, This may sound crazy to a lot of people because I also didn't remember most of my childhood, but there are people out there who remember their entire childhood. And you're actually supposed to be able to do that. Like, and so if you can't remember your entire childhood, there's a really good chance that your unconscious is blocking that to keep you safe. And she's right. You don't have to remember it to be able to heal it in the moment. And in fact, sometimes remembering it can cause more damage than it can progression. And so, yeah, that's really important. This could have been chemically induced. This trauma it could have come from your mother when you were in utero. We actually carry a lot of patterns just based on what mom was feeling while she was pregnant with us. So like, you didn't have any control over that, right? If you believe in past lives, it could have also come from some distant trauma or some trauma in your genetic code, meaning like your mother could have gone through a war, or could have gone through something, really catastrophic. And that's now just imprinted in your genetic code, the same way we pass on any other gene. Genes are just information. They're just patterns. And so the reason the nose on your face looks like your parents' nose is because that was a pattern. And so it's the same as like, if your dad was, full of rage and he never expressed that, he never released that before you were procreated, you could be carrying that in your genes. So yeah,
So,
go for it.
Sorry. This is scientifically proven. So this is not something that's woo at all, although it sounds woo. Science has caught up to the fact that generational trauma is a real thing. They've studied the genes of people who were the grandchildren of Holocaust survivors and genocide survivors. And there are certain genes that continue to be activated or turned on that aren't in other people. And so this is not something, and what we know to be true also scientifically, and I do highly recommend Body Keeps the Score, is that generational trauma like that can also correspond and correlate with cancer. So cancer runs in family, trauma runs in family. And that's basically your body literally holding and storing the trauma. Now, we use the word trauma a lot, I think. And so I do want to let people know, like, and I think the example she gave is like someone taking the ice cream. Like, we think of trauma as like getting in a car accident or losing their child, but trauma doesn't have to be. Trauma is literally like you get a cut on your arm, your body has received trauma. That cut will, heal in a few days. So it's a minor trauma, but it's still traumatic. You might still have a scar for that, right? Your body may never get rid of that scar, even though as like cuts go, it was pretty minor. So it's not necessarily the trauma that we look at, but the pattern that was built around that trauma. And so if your great grandmother lived through genocide, she's going to tell you as you grow, her daughter, and then you, all sorts of things about how to keep yourself safe. You're going to build patterns based on grandma's trauma and her genes, which were passed on to you. Actually, mothers pass on mitochondrial DNA in a way that men don't. And so you're going to have that, at least the tendency to activate those genes that other people aren't going to have. And so you might not even know what the trauma is. You might be undoing trauma. Well, and that's the thing, like the woo community talks about undoing generational trauma, but the science is real there, that you want to, in many cases, deactivate genes that were activated generations ago by doing the work that we're going to talk about here.
Yeah. At some point, your inner asshole, the saboteur, has taken the reins and is now driving the ship. So whether it's passed down to you in any of the ways that we've just mentioned, that's what it is. Your inner asshole has the reins and it's driving the ship. Ships don't have reins, but you guys know what I mean. It convinces us that something is very, very wrong. Usually it's us, or it's at least our fault. Like something's wrong with me inherently, like I'm flawed, right? And this is also where we get the healing hamster wheel, where like we're constantly in a state of like, I'll just I just need to keep growing and keep working on myself, and then I'll be worthy of success, or then I'll be worthy of rest. If I just, read this one more book, then I'll be able to, like, it's going to solve all my problems, right? And it's not true. Actually, part of what can help overcome this is instilling the belief systems. And this is a practice. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. Instilling the belief systems for yourself that you're already perfect. You're already whole. Like right this moment, you're worthy of success. Right this moment, you're worthy of rest. Not in the future, not after the next event. Right now. Right now, you're worthy of those things. And you get to make the decision to give them to yourself. Oftentimes anxiety, where you're suppressing emotions, it's because you don't feel like now's the right time to express them. How many times have you been like at an event and somebody says something to you and it makes you really upset, or it violates a boundary, or it goes against your contract, and you decide like, okay, I'll just harbor that until I get home. When I get home, I'll yell at my husband about it and he'll get it, right? What you did there was you suppressed emotion, you suppressed what potentially could have been a trauma, right? And so that holds us back, and that gets stored in the tissues. And it doesn't matter if you go home and you rant about it, that's not releasing it. That's actually just feeding that same cycle. So our inner asshole, it convinces us that something is very, very wrong, and it keeps us from being in alignment with our highest good. It keeps us out of our truth, and it keeps us from experiencing life fully. So if you have anxiety and it's due to a, Sarah, I'll be right back.
I'm not sure where she was going with that, but while she's gone, we can all start reflecting upon some of the things that trigger us, because those things are probably where your anxiety is stored. So Dawn gave the example earlier that sounds trigger her. My guess is that sounds trigger her because she can't control them. So when the dog's barking, she's probably thinking about her neighbors. She's probably thinking about how, like, what if someone's judging her because her dog's going crazy, right? Like, it's not the dog barking. It's not the sound itself. It's that she can't necessarily control that sound, right? And so look at the things that bother you. Me, if someone comes up and questions my decision-making at an event, that's a trigger for me. Now I know that about myself, so I can like then take a deep breath and be like, why did that trigger me? Like, I'm the expert, but people are allowed to have their own opinions, right? And so once we recognize what our triggers are, we can start to build repattern. We can start to repattern our responses to those things. And so, I mean, I would love to hear if anybody can, easily at hand knows of something that triggers them into anxiety, so that we can potentially take a look at how we can repattern that thought process that one has, which is not really a thought process. It's kind of like, again, it's a pattern. Patterns are something that we build from the very beginning of our lives because it makes it easier for us to survive. We know if this happens, we do this. And it's usually to keep ourselves safe. So when Dawn talks about the SAB, or the saboteur, that saboteur is usually trying to keep you safe from something based on something that happened in the past. Someone stole your ice cream, so now you don't share your ice cream ever. You don't even like eating around other people when you're having ice cream for fear that someone might take it. That's not a thing that you think about. It's just a pattern that you've created because you want to keep that ice cream safe. And it shows up in our lives in any number of ways. When my mom talks about certain things, immediate anxiety. Moms are a great thing to look at when you're trying to figure out where your trauma is.
That's a good, yeah, true story. Speaking of momming, my goodness, guys, she never wants my attention so hard as whenever I'm giving my attention to something else. So it keeps us from experiencing life. That's what I wanted to say, was that when you're in anxiety, typically it's the resistance to feeling anything deeply. And so even though you may think, oh, well, I'm not an angry person, there's rage in there that needs to be expressed. If you think like, well, I'm sort of depressed, I'm actually having a really hard time like feeling happy feelings, that also is due to suppression of feeling. The thing is that you can't pick and choose which feelings you allow. If you start to close down negative feelings, you also close down positive feelings. And so all of it's just getting stuck in the tissues. Your issues are stored in your tissues. And then you get stuck with anxiety and you have a hard time feeling anything other than panic, right? So what's the good news? Did we have any questions, by the way, while I was gone? Did I miss anything? No. Okay. The good news, you can take the reins back. You don't have to live in anxiety. It'll show up. I'm not saying it'll never show up, because it will. The saboteur, the monkey mind, it never stops its chatter. And actually, the more successful you get, new levels, new devils, right? The more successful you get, the more that shit's going to just spin and chatter. Every new hurdle for you is going to be even scarier than the last. And you always going to have the choice to give in to the saboteur and say, like, okay, you get to run the show. We're going to stay in our safe space, and I'm just going to feel panic and not like explore the world because it's not safe out there. Or you can choose the opposing archetype, which is the magician, who just trusts everything's going to work out. Everything's going to be fine. In fact, it's going to be more than fine, because I am the result of divine intelligence, whatever you want to call that force. I'm the result of that force. It's keeping my heart beating right now, right? And guys, for those of you who have watched a webinar with me, you're hearing the same things over and over and over again, and that's on purpose. All these tools are the same, and all these things that we have, anxiety, depression, imposter syndrome, they're all stemming from that same source, which is like under feeling, it's being stuck in the head and not being in the body. And so you can take the reins back. It requires bravery, and it requires presence. We have to begin the journey out of our minds and back into our bodies. For some of us, that's really scary. I've got a couple people in the waiting room. Admit. And admit. Oh, Kim is here. Kim's coming to Dallas, I think.
And Barbara,
hey guys.
an OG group member.
Oh, awesome. Hey guys, let us know, drop in the chat if you're able. If you're driving or something, that's totally fine. You're just going to listen. Drop in the chat for us where you're from, the name of your business, and what makes you anxious. Or you can say it if you guys are, I see you guys are off mute.
Sorry, my name is Barbara. I just joined. I'm not sure I didn't really hear the first part of that message, what you just said. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I just said we wanted to know who you are. So now we know. Barbara, nice to meet you. The name of your bar and what makes you anxious, if you feel like sharing.
Okay, so the name of my bar is Bar Barbies.
Super cute. Love that.
My name is Barbara. That's kind of where it came from. Everybody would call me Barbie, so I incorporated that in there. And what gives me is anxiety is, well, trying to wear so many hats and do so many things and do everything, and that's what gives me anxiety.
Yeah, you're not alone. You're not alone. We've been talking about how a lot of mobile bar owners have a lot of the same tics, right? There's a lot of the same things, a lot of the same themes that pop up for you guys, whether it's forgetting things for events, wearing all the hats, staffing, having too much on your plate, too much responsibility, not wanting to fail, right? So thank you. Thanks guys for showing up. We are into the good news now, which I should have named differently. We are into the good news now about taking the reins back. So we have to get back into our bodies. Your body is a feeling mechanism. And here's what I want to tell you about the absolute, infinite, the most infinite intelligence that you'll ever experience. It lives in your body. And I can tell you right now, you can witness it because your heart is beating and you're not doing that. You're not doing that, right? You're breathing, but you're probably not thinking about it. Your kidneys are working. My kidneys are working and I have no idea how kidneys work. You know what I mean? And so your body is an intelligent mechanism. And if you give back into that and get out of your head, your body's going to tell you exactly what it needs. It's super intuitive. It's going to communicate with you and it wants to have a relationship with you. That's the other piece here. And so a lot of times when we have anxiety, we're stuck in the brain. We're stuck in that mental chatter. And so your body is far more intelligent and more capable of driving the ship of your world than your saboteur. And actually, when you're like, oh, but Dawn, I have to make decisions, I've got to go back up into my brain. Not necessarily, because your body will tell you 100% of the time what decision is the right decision. Sarah does, what's it called? It's like kinesiology. It's like muscle testing. What is it that you do? Human pendulum?
Yeah, I think the cutesy name of it is the human pendulum. And it's basically when I get overwhelmed with a decision, if I can stand in one place, I'll stand in one place, take a deep breath, and I'll just like say yes a bunch of times. And like my body will like pull forward. And if I say no, then my body will fall back. And so then I ask the question, if I'm in my head about something, I'll ask the question. So Dallas was one of those things where I was like, we didn't sell a whole lot of tickets straight out of the gate, which I was expecting that we would. And so I was like, should we cancel while we still have the opportunity? And I was in my head about it. Yeah, I was like, the math, and what if people don't like this or whatever, right? So I just stood in my office right here, exactly right there, and was like, should I cancel Dallas? And my body just like went forward. No, it went back. It said no. And so I was like, all right, we're doing Dallas. Like, that's the decision. And it really just gets you out of for me, it gets me out of my head and gets me into my body, because my body already knows, right? The chatter going on upstairs is like confusing, but like ultimately, and we did a similar thing with Emily yesterday with like a decision that she has to make. Ultimately, she knew the decision. It was in all of her words. It was everywhere, but she just wasn't willing to claim it. And so if you're able to get out of your head, and sometimes that's listening to the words, sometimes it's, utilizing your body, then the answer becomes clear.
Yeah, one of my favorite ways when I'm working with someone is to listen to their words, because we speak unconsciously as well. So underneath this very limited mind chatter that you have is about 98% of your operating power. And actually 98% of what you do in a day, literally, like if you get up and go potty and like make coffee and then like walk the dog, all of those things are unconscious. You're not thinking about them anymore. Now, maybe when you first got the dog, you had to think about it, but like after that, it became unconscious. You just wake up, you put on the leash and you take them out, right? And that's on purpose. It's so that you don't have to think again. Could you imagine if right now you're like having to like think about how to keep your kidneys running as well as your heart beating? Like, you'd be overloaded. So this is your processing power. And so you speak unconsciously as well. And so I love to have conversations with people where I can extract what they're telling me. I always get out of calls and people are like, oh my God, that was amazing. How did you know? Because you told me. Like you just said it to me and then I just repeated it back to you. And then like people are like, whoa, that was really vast. And I'm like, yeah. And you can do the same thing in your house. Like if you're having an issue, press record on your phone and like just like vomit your words and then play it back to yourself and listen to what you're saying. And you'll find the decision has already been made. You'll find where you're limiting yourself. You'll find where you're not being kind to yourself. Right. So our bodies are far more intelligent than our mind. Driving the ship, ran on subconscious and intelligence of the body. Did that. Thinking is the mind. Feeling is the body. Yeah. So, and oftentimes your body, when it speaks to you, is going to speak to you through urges or feelings, right? Like your body doesn't say, we have to potty, right? It's just a feeling. You just feel it. The more you start to trust those really small moments, like going potty, like if anybody here, if you're busy and you like hold it, and I know this seems silly, but it's common with people with anxiety. You like hold it until like later you can go. That right there is you not honoring your body. It's you being out of touch or silencing the intelligent mechanism. So like if you can just practice going potty when your body says, I need to go, you'll start realizing there's a relationship there that you can cultivate. And it gets deeper and deeper and deeper. I'm going to see Emily said something here. But the fear is consuming. What if it's the wrong decision? Or what if your client gets upset with your response? What if you take an event over and it's in your head That's the anxiety I live with, the what if. Yeah. And the saboteur, Emily, this is delicious because the saboteur is always going to ask what if, right? What if it, and so to your saboteur, and this is medicine, guys, you can do this. This is alchemy is what this is. I'm going to give you. So Emily's saboteur is saying, what if it's the wrong decision? I would ask the saboteur, what if it's the right decision? The saboteur will say, okay, well, what if your clients don't like, they get upset with the response? You say, what if they love the response? What if it's the response they needed? Your saboteur is going to say, what if I take on an event and it's over my head? And you say, what if I take on an event and it leads to unlimited potential? And so if the saboteur wants to have a conversation, you get to separate from it. You are not the thoughts in your mind, guys. They're just happening. They're literally not yours. They're programs that were stored there from when you were a little kid, right? And so if you can just start creating some space and talk back to it. That's the best way to create space, right? Right now, if you talk to me, it's because you know I'm outside of you. And so you can treat the saboteur like it's also outside of you and start asking it questions, or start, when it says something to you, give it a positive rebuttal. Sarah, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah. The other thing that I love about this exercise is the question, like, what does it mean about me? Right? Because oftentimes the sab becomes really, really strong. And so you can ask it questions, but ultimately it's there because you think it means something about you. People are going to think that I suck if this event doesn't go well. People are going to think, Bar Magnolia is not reliable if the bartender doesn't show up. Right? You just automatically follow it all the way down the trail, which we don't necessarily even know that we're doing, but we follow it all the way down the trail to, and then I'll die. Right? Yeah. Like it's ultimately like, they're going to hate Bar Magnolia. Bar Magnolia is going to fail. I'm not gonna be able to feed my family. We're all going to starve to death, and then we're going to die.
Yeah.
We don't know that we're doing that, but anytime we make it mean something about us to a point where it brings up anxiety, it's like the Maslow triangle, right? Like the safety, that's at the bottom. We no longer feel safe, and we feel like, we can't provide, and that it'll just spiral out of control. And so recognizing or being able to say, like, what does this mean about me? And then ultimately it means nothing. It means nothing about me. Yeah, maybe I fail. Doesn't mean listen, the number of businesses out there that I know of, even on an intimate level, that have failed over and over and over and over and over and over again, and are still in business because they don't let the failure mean anything about them. They utilize it to make themselves better. Like, that's the key. It's not about when you fail or even if you fail, it's how you recover. Right. And so, like, whenever your SAB is super strong, it's because you think it's telling a story about you as an individual. And
Yeah,
as
you think
John
it's true.
said, y'all are perfect as you are, because you're not perfect, but you're perfect as you are because you have things to learn. We all do. And the only way to do that oftentimes is through failure and seeing how not to do something. And so, I love the conversations with it because oftentimes it helps us uncover the pattern. But also a quick way is just like, I'm not going to let that mean anything about me.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I think initially, if you want to familiarize yourself with the patterns so that you can catch it in the future, because what you'll find is that you'll uncover a pattern that you can then recognize, right? Like, so when it comes up in the future, you can be like, oh, this doesn't mean anything about me. I know that this is a pattern, right? But once you're to that place, you can just say, that doesn't get to mean anything about me, and you can literally start shutting it down. And so there's this delicate dance between letting it spew and finding out where it's spewing from, and then cutting it off at its life source. You know what I'm saying? Like, this, you don't get to say that about me. That's not very nice, saboteur. Let's don't talk about people like that, right? Like, I wrote down the spiral around what does it mean about me, because that one I really wanted to highlight. You will always, if you follow it down that rabbit hole, it'll always come to like imminent destruction and death, always. And I think that that's because we are literally just hardwired to survive, period. Like, everything on this planet is hardwired to survive. Even like if you have animals that don't really even have conscious minds, and their one goal is to just reproduce and like feed so that they can reproduce and then feed so that the species lives on. And so like the saboteur is really there so that our species lives on. Thank you. We love that. And also like, it's okay if I open a business. It's not gonna end the entire world if I do that, right? If I run my business or if I show up in a specific way. So you can ask it, what does it mean about me? And it's going to give you a couple of responses. You keep saying, what does that mean about me? What does that mean about me? When you get to the end, what you've done there, and this is a mind trick, your mind doesn't know the difference between what's imagined and what's real. You can put that in your back pocket and save it for a later date because that's super potent. Your mind does not know the difference between what is imagined and what is real. And so if you can imagine being homeless and living in a box and no one loves you, and that's the reason that your saboteur is yelling at you. If you can imagine that and you can face it and you can say, you know what, I still choose me. I still have my back. I still love myself and I'm going to have my back and I'm not going to quit. Right? At that point, you have already faced the worst case scenario. You've already faced it. And so like now you have nothing to lose because you've already been homeless in a box. Your mind thinks so, you know? So, so now you move forward, right? Guys, I want to open up to any questions that you guys might have. Let me check on time. Oh, good. We have about 15 minutes left. If you guys have questions, drop them in the chat.
Also hot seat. So if anybody wants us to unpack any
we can do a little
patterns
coaching
or anxiety that they have.
Yes. But I want to give you guys a couple of tools too. So weigh in on the chat and then we can hot seat. I'm going to give you guys these tools. Also that some of us have been taught that our bodies are shameful, untrustworthy, unintelligent, not safe, or that it's not safe to feel. And so keep that in mind when you're working through this, that we want to reintegrate the safety that we're giving ourselves. We want to reintegrate love and respect for our own bodies, for our own intelligent systems. Do not try and positive poly your way through anxiety. That will make it worse. So we are not here to be positive polys, guys. That's one of the most toxic things that you can do. If you want more on that, you can watch my previous webinar on toxic positivity. It makes things worse, not better. You have to be honest. We want honest Annas, not positive polys. All right. So some tools that you can use is my favorite one is to get into the body is that you imagine light at the forebrain right here. You imagine a little ball of light. It's right in front of your head. And I want you to put all of your attention, you close your eyes. I want you to put all of your attention into this ball of light. And then I want you to slowly move that ball of light down below your nose, below your mouth, through your throat, down into your chest. And if it starts to bounce around, that's okay. Like bring it all back together and keep going. And you want to move it all the way down to your core. You want to put it in your belly. When it's right behind your belly button, I want you to just hold it there. Take some deep breaths, expand it if you want with the breath, and like contract it when you exhale. This exercise creates something amazing. Because if any of you are doing it right now, what you'll realize is that you cannot think. There are no thoughts. Your brain is completely quiet when you do this because all of your attention is moving this ball of light, which it just represents your attention, into your belly. And so you cannot think a thought. And so if you ever find yourself just full of anxiety, wound up way in your head, try that. Super simple, right? Another tool is setting better boundaries. Say no to shit, guys. Just say no to shit. Seriously, like saying no to more things is the most liberating experience you will ever go through. Stop people pleasing, right? If that's a pattern that you can watch and then uncover. And if you notice, like I'm only doing this to make someone else happy, then you shouldn't be doing it. I don't usually like the word shouldn't, but I'm going to use it there intentionally. You can do the inner work. If any of you guys have ever heard of shadow work, you want to be really mindful of who you're looking to begin the shadow work journey. But if it feels good for you, feel it in your body. If you pick up a book on shadow work and it doesn't feel good, don't even try, just put it down. If you pick one up and it feels good, then you want to go with that one. So shadow work, that's a good keyword. Let yourself feel it to heal it. Feel the thing, feel it right now. If a client says something to you and it pisses you off, feel it right then. Well, Dawn, that makes me unprofessional. Well, that's people pleasing. We don't live in that world anymore, right? You have to feel it to heal it. And so you want to allow that to come up. Take a few breaths. I'm not saying like lash out and be violent like that. That's not what I mean. But allow your body to process that emotion. Yes, Sarah.
I love this because a lot of times we have big feelings in places where it wouldn't be necessarily appropriate for us to express them.
Mm-hmm.
You're at someone's wedding and your anxiety is triggered, like it's not okay. Like she said, to like lash out. It's not like right, because here's the thing, it's not about anybody else.
Yeah.
It's not about them. Maybe they were, rambunctious or rude or inappropriate, or they offended you, or they overstepped their boundaries or whatever, right? Maybe they did. How you respond to that, if it didn't trigger you and someone else was standing there, they would have brushed it off and gone on with life, right? But you got triggered. And that means that that's a you thing. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's why I think it's super important to recognize that when you get triggered anxiously, if your trigger is to become angry, or to lash out, or to become deflective, maybe you're sarcastic, maybe you're hurtful in like the way that you respond to someone else, you are allowed to have that feeling. You need to just remove yourself from the situation and recognize that like you have to process that feeling, but you can't make it about them. You can't make it. I don't care if they insulted you to your face. What that triggered in you is a you thing.
Yeah.
I'm not good enough. I'm fat. I'm ugly. I'm not a professional, shitty business owner, whatever it is that goes through your mind subconsciously. That's a you thing, not a them thing. And you should take that to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Have a good cry. Have a good, let it, what I do? I like to shake. I've read in a few different books.
Yes. Animals do
As
that.
as we have kind of progressed evolutionarily, we used to shake and get all that anxious energy out. Like when we about, fight or whatever, we would shake to let it run through our body. If anybody here has ever been super angry, you shake, you just can't help it. Like your hands start shaking, like you're holding your drink and you're just like, whoa, I can't believe this is happening. Just shake, let yourself shake, right? And then get back to it. But don't perpetuate the trauma cycle by being mean to the person in front of you.
Yeah.
Even if they deserved it, right? You're allowed to have the emotion. You're not allowed to deflect it onto other people. And you should give yourself space. I don't care if you have to shut the bar down for 3 minutes, 5 minutes. If someone comes up to you like, hey, why'd you shut the bar down? It was necessary. None of your fucking business. You know what I mean? And so you just go to the bathroom, shake yourself out, come back. But that's also why I recommend 2 people behind the bar at all times. Sometimes necessary. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And this is important because when it comes to setting healthy boundaries, you hear often like someone violated my boundaries. That's your fault. That's your fault. People can't violate your boundaries. Only you can do that. And so if I set a boundary and I say, I don't want, that there's no refunds for my contract, and someone comes in and they're like, I would like a refund. No. Well, you're a shitty business owner. That's your right to think that. Like, that doesn't have to say anything about me. You know what I mean? I know I'm not a shitty business owner. It's in my contract. That's the difference between being reactive and being responsible. So when we're responsible for our emotional being and responsible for our own feelings, we're able to respond. Okay. When we're reactive, we're literally reacting the situation. So someone says to me, you're a shitty business owner. I say, you're a shitty human. Now I'm reacting their energy. They gave me energy. I said, oh, I'll take that as mine. I'll believe that that's true about me. And then now I'll lash out and give it back to you. And now we're in this loop, in this like cycle, right? Whereas being able to respond is deciding, man, I didn't like that feeling. It kind of reminds me of when my dad said I was a shitty human. And so I'm going to go to the bathroom and shake or I'm going to go to the bathroom, I'm going to cry. Whatever I have to do to release that, right? Some other things that you can do is practice releasing control whenever possible. Anxiety is also control driven. So just practice in little things that don't like make you feel like all wound up. Like if your kid's doing a thing and they're safe, but like you don't really like it, don't control it. Let it be. And what happens is that becomes learned. And then you'll be able to release control in bigger things. Like if you're delegating, shameless plug, that's a future lesson dropping in MBA. All right. So be in your body, do anything you can to be in your body, dance, cry, take a shower, sing, get under a waterfall naked, talk to somebody that you trust, preferably someone trained in unraveling shadows, or someone that you know is going to support you in the way you want to be supported, not someone who's going to reinforce you should be angry. Oh yeah, that person shouldn't have said that. That guy's a piece of POS, right? Like that's not helpful. Start building self-trust by honoring your own word and listening to your body when it calls to you. And again, guys, this is so small as like, you get up every morning, you have your cup of coffee. This morning, your body says, we don't want that. It's too acidic. Oh, but if I don't have my coffee, then I'll get a migraine and then I won't feel, then I won't be able to get my work done. All that's saboteur. Your body said, I don't want the coffee. Right. And so just for that day, don't have the coffee, or even for that hour, maybe you have some later. Right. But right now your body said no. So honor that. If you're in the middle of your workday and your body's like, we need to go for a run, you just get up and you go run. It's what you have to do. Honor your body when it calls to you. So those are all the notes that I have. And I was like, I don't have a lot of notes, but actually I had a lot of notes. So, so I want to know, yeah, Emily.
Okay. So in the past how do you prevent where is the line between listening to your body and then getting stuck in a cycle?
Can you give me more on that? Like an example.
I just don't feel like it today. You think your body needs rest, but then like I've gotten caught in the cycle of then procrastination and avoidance.
Procrastination is a yummy topic because procrastination usually means either A, what you're about to do is out of alignment and you don't want to do it because it's not good for you. And so like, don't do that thing. My favorite words are have to. Oh, but Dawn, I have to do the laundry. Who said that? Like, who said you have to do laundry? You know what I mean? At some point, the laundry will get to the place where you're like, now I feel good. Now's a good time to do this laundry, right? Well, but Dawn, what if that's like, now it's 3 whole giant piles of laundry? So what? Like, what are you making it mean about you that you have a lot of laundry? Well, my mom said, like, when I was a kid, that if I didn't clean up my clothes, that I wasn't like going to get ice cream. And so now I associate that. You see what I'm saying? Like, you can do the work and find out, why are you procrastinating? The other reason that we procrastinate is because it's something that you don't want to do. It's just something that you don't want to do. That's Sarah. Do you have another reason why we would procrastinate?
All the reasons. All those reasons. Oftentimes there's a lack of clarity as to how to do the thing that you don't know, like what you don't know, or there's like something about it that feels squishy and intangible. And so you're like, I don't know how to move forward with this. Yes. Again, it's like analysis paralysis is what I call that. And sometimes it's just starting it that like literally anything, especially if it's something you're excited to do or you really want to do, but you're like analysis paralysis. I don't know where to go with this. Right. And so sometimes it's outside assistance. And so having someone else take a look at it, for me, it's my husband. I'm like, will you look at this? Like, I don't know where to get started with this. Or Dawn or Emily. Right. And so lack of clarity. I love the one that the 2 that Dawn said, you're out of alignment with your values. It's not something that like feels good to you. And so you probably shouldn't do, or 3, you don't want to fucking do it. That's one of the most powerful things as an entrepreneur, if I have things that are perpetually on my to-do list because I just keep pushing them off, chances are I need someone else to do those for me. Either I don't like doing them, I'm not the right person to do them, I don't have clarity on them, and somebody else will have clarity on them. And so delegating those things or getting insight from other people, or it may be entirely unfucking necessary. And that's the other thing. I don't think that someone else did it. That's how someone else does it. They say I'm supposed to post on Instagram every damn day. And so I resent it. I don't like doing it. But I'm going to force myself to do it. Well, what if you didn't post on Instagram every day? You know what I mean? Like, what if you just stopped doing that thing? What's going to happen? Probably nothing, especially if you do things that are more in alignment. Maybe you decide that you like showing up on TikTok more, or in person more, or doing emails more. Like, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to do the things that just because people are saying you have to do them. Even with laundry, like if you fucking hate laundry, then have someone else come and pick up your laundry, or, whatever it is, you pay someone $12 an hour to do your laundry. I have a woman here who does it for $20 or something. She's like, I'll do as many loads as I can for $20, within this time frame. Like, amazing, go forth and do that. But also you might find that it may just be a reframe. And anytime you can shift, and Dawn can speak to this personally, because she shared with me some alchemy that she did around doing like the house chores and stuff. Like, we probably don't get a whole lot of energy unless you're a Virgo like me, with cleaning. We're probably like, I don't want to do the dishes. I love laundry. I love laundry. There's just something very therapeutic, like folding those little clothes, the kids, and just being in there like by myself folding clothes. And so it's I get to spend some time folding laundry, and like reframing. Like, I love the fact that I can do the dishes because I'm caring for my family and I have dishes to wash, and like I have so much gratitude around this thing. So if you can reframe it and feel good about it, awesome. If you can't reframe it and feel good about it, try and get someone else to do it, right? Because that means your genius is being distracted by these things that don't light you up, when your genius might be over here and might be of greater value to yourself and humanity if you were able to spend more time over there.
Yeah, a piece here, and thank you, Emily, for hanging out with us. A piece here that I wanted to note was in resistance. Guys, resistance is key. If you're procrastinating out of resistance, you can identify resistance towards something in how often it shows up for you, in how difficult it is for you to move forward with that thing, right? You can feel resistance in your body. Like, I just really dread it. It feels like dread, right? Like, I really don't want to do this. I really don't want this outcome. Resistance is another reason that you'll procrastinate. Sometimes resistance is, and this is why it's important to have people in your life, right? Who you can talk to and who you can, and if you don't have them right now, find them, find those people, because you can jog through this and find out there's no right or wrong here. There's no black or white, like this is the right way, this is the wrong way. This thing causes anxiety, this thing doesn't, right? This is, how do I know if it's in resistance? You have to work through that. You have to ask, you have to talk with people and listen to your language, or find someone who will listen to your language. You have to listen to your body about it. Because the same action can be taken in shadow or in light. And shadow is just meaning like it's resistance, attachments, it's sticky. It's not clear. It's not clean. It's not an action that moves your genius forward, right? The same exact action, right? Like, I can have a cup of coffee because it's my life force, and without it, I'm just like I just can't get anything done, and I'm exhausted all day. That's me drinking coffee in shadow because I need it. Do you see what I'm saying? Whereas, like, I can drink coffee because I love it. I just love coffee. Like, it would be delicious to have some coffee right now. You see, it's the same exact thing. The activity hasn't changed, but all the mental and physical, like, sensations are different. One is like reliance, like I have to have this. And the other one is like, and so that's the same thing. Like, I have to do laundry. And the other thing is like, you'll close your vision that way, right? Like, if I have to do laundry, it keeps you from seeing that there's a lady on Facebook who will fold your laundry for $20, right? So like, yeah, that's the riff I have on resistance. Well, we are over time. Oops, I did that. But I want to know, does anybody else have any questions? And has this been helpful? Let me know what you think, guys. Like, and feel free to come off mute and like talk to me if you would like. I'd love to hear your voice.
Hi, Dawn. Can you hear me?
Hey.
This is Gabby.
I can hear you, Gabby.
I can actually switch. Well, y'all don't want to see me right now, but I thought I was kind of asking a question, and then I think I kind of answered my own question. But then I thought another great topic one day might be how you use all this towards interpersonal relationships, whether that be with a partner or a business partner or something along those lines. But how, your own triggers versus somebody else's triggers and your traumas versus their traumas. And I know you touched on that a little bit, but kind of like how you rectify those in relationships with other people that you are working with intimately or living with intimately or something along those lines.
Well, I love that. And actually that's a theme, because when I work with people, generally we work on their relationships, whether it's with their mom, they come to me and like there's business, and that's the other piece, is that all of this is reflected, right? So like where you're out of alignment with your mom, you're also experiencing that same misalignment in your business. Like if you're at odds with your partner, you're also experiencing that in your business. And because nothing is separate, right? And so it's happening. If you're at odds with your partner, you're experiencing that in your money. You're experiencing that in your relationships elsewhere. You're experiencing it in your relationship with yourself. And so this is actually a theme that comes up often when I work with people, is how this interplays. Well, mostly how relationships then translate into other places. And because relationships tends to be the thing that we talk about most. So I wrote that down, and we will absolutely put that into the pot.
Yeah, that's great. I asked that question, and then the story that came into my head, just to kind of tell it briefly, is it was interesting. I have the same trigger as Sarah, where it being questioned when I'm the expert on site. And I had an email exchange with a planner recently who was a brand new planner who I'd never worked with. And she was questioning several times a situation with glassware. And I kind of responded politely, and the client was CC'd on this email. So of course I was very polite, and I finally I recognized I kind of got a little short with her. And out of much respect for her, she actually emailed me privately and said, "Hey, can we have a quick chat?" And she called me, and what she was perceiving was that I wasn't giving her respect because she was a new planner in the industry. So clearly that was a trigger for her. So it's like our triggers were hitting each other, which I thought was so interesting. Her trigger was, she thought, here's this established local business owner who's not respecting me because I'm a new player in the field, when I was actually being triggered that she was questioning me on something that I had a lot of experience with. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I have mad respect, and we end up having a great conversation out of it.
Well, I mean, actually, that sounds like you guys handled it really well, because you guys were able to open up and see that you were both triggered by the same thing. And that's exactly, I mean, that's ideal, right? Like if we could all just like walk up to our significant other when we're in the middle of a riff and be like, this is why this hurts me. And I recognize that that's not yours. Right. And then they would say, okay, this is why this hurts me. And I recognize that that's not yours. And then we could say like, okay, where can we find common ground? That's alchemy, baby. Like that's exactly what that is. And so it sounds like you handled it really, really well. And just that you guys were having the conversation. There will not be a time where you're not triggered. That's what I want you to know. Like if you aren't triggered, if you get to a place in your world where you're so comfy that there are no triggers, you're no longer growing and expanding and up leveling, right? Which is fine if that's where you want to stay. But as you continue to grow, there are going to be new things that show up that you're like, that doesn't feel good. Let me investigate. And I think that's the game. I think that's why we're here.
Definitely. Well, thank you. I loved it about it.
Yeah. Did anybody else have any questions or want to chime in? Sarah, you looked like you were going to say something. Was that just me misreading your face?
No, my internet was so unstable that everybody paused for me. So I was like, what's going on here?
Oh, okay. All right, guys. Well,
I love
thank
this
you.
topic. I love when
No, go for it.
Yeah. My internet's unstable. I just want everyone to know I love this topic and I could talk about it all day. And so we're going to definitely do more of the alchemy series. Dawn is a true magician at this. And just remember, personal development is business development. And that's why we bring alchemy as a part of the Mobile Bar Academy.
Yeah. Thanks, guys, so much. And you'll see more of me, and I hope to see more of you. I'll talk to you guys soon.